What's going on, guys? This is Matt Jones coming to you with another episode of Bogey Free. Evan couldn't make it with us tonight, so luckily Logan Harper was able to fill in for us. How you doing, Logan?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. My podcast virginity is being taken away here, so
Oh wow, I didn't know that. This is exciting.
yeah.
All right, well I'll try to be gentle. Um, you you can find Logan on Twitter at Logan Harper 11. And there's a pretty good chance that you see his writing every week in your email if you look at FanShare. So how's that been going for you?
Yeah, it's been great. I love the FanShare product and started writing for them and projecting out ownership actually using their data. So we try to just take the pulse of the industry and really provide the best and the most detailed ownership explanation and projections on the market there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you guys have been everything that I've seen. You guys have been killing it lately. So that's definitely good to see. It's a good tool. If you've ever listened to this podcast before, you know that we constantly cite FanShare in general. So yeah, we're big fans here too. I don't have my hat on right now, but Andrew was nice enough to send me a hat. So
Yeah, no, I've got one as well, and yeah, we've had a great run this summer. We built it in the spring and have been tracking kind of the results throughout the summer and have been very pleased and they've been very useful to a lot of people in GPPs.
yeah, absolutely. So real quick before we get into this week, I do want to just quickly break down what happened last week.
Mm.
I mean, I know there's a lot of people who listen to this that don't actually really watch golf. It's just, for the DFS purposes. But if you're a fan of golf, I mean, you couldn't really beat that ending this past week. I mean, I was pulling for Spieth, but that was something else on that playoff hole. What are your thoughts? Are you a
Yeah,
watcher of golf
no,
too?
I'm a huge golf fan and
Good.
from the get go, and so that's really how I got into this in the beginning. And I didn't really have any action on the line. My main kind of DFS last week was in the Fantasy Golf World Championship, and at that point, so I qualified for that, and at that point, I knew my entry was going to be making it to the top 100 of that. So I didn't really have any kind of sweat going on. So I was just out there just rooting. I was actually rooting for Dustin for some reason. I came to
Yeah.
kind of want to see the comeback, and once he fist pumped that putt on 18 to make it to the playoff, I was rooting for Dustin and just great to watch some amazing golf.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was there on Friday
Wow.
watching the second round, and just really cool course, really different. Obviously they had never played there before, so it was these guys' first crack at it. And from everything I read, it seemed like everybody really liked the course, and I still honestly can't get over that drive on the playoff hole. Like
He took
my,
a 45-degree angle compared to what Speed did. It was just remarkable.
I know those screenshots like next to each other that were going around on Twitter were just nuts. And me and my dad were sitting there on Friday on 18, right at the corner of the dog leg, and I still can't believe that he took that line and that ball ended up where it was. It really, I honestly think, regardless of situation, that was one of the best drives I've ever seen. So that was it was still fun to watch. I'm a bit of a Spieth fanboy, but it was still fun to see DJ pull it out, because that was, I mean, you can't really ask for more out of a final hole in golf.
No, I mean, a lot of people. I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of people have kind of been complaining. Some of the pros, in particular, have been complaining about the fact that he was actually able to take that line, and kind of complaining about the hole. But I still, like you said, great final hole, and it's hard to go wrong to see someone win a tournament like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so that's that about does it for the Northern Trust. We are heading over up to Boston, TPC Boston this week. And it's a par 71. It's around 7,300 yards. So, the guys get an extra par 5 this week. And from everything that I've sort of looked at so far, it seems like there's a slight edge for distance. And obviously the usual, clearly you need to hit greens and everything else. But what are your thoughts on the course,
Well,
Logan?
first of all, I'm just happy that we're at a course that we've kind of seen before. Last
Yeah.
week, I felt, a lot of everyone even said we were kind of going in a little bit blind, just never seen the course played in competition at all, and
Right.
I was in New York for 2 or 3 years, and I never even heard of the course
Right.
when I lived there. So finally going back here, I'm not the biggest course history guy, but I use it kind of pretty evenly with all the other kind of inputs that I use. But just
Right.
knowing a course and kind of knowing what it suits and that kind of thing is very valuable as well. So just having some sort of insight in the course, I'm pretty excited this week. And I think I'm definitely seeing a lot of people, and I think if you look at the fan share kind of subject tags, distance is up there. But I think there's going to be a lot of holes that the guys will have wedges on as well. So if you really find a kind of a low-owned guy that's really sharp right now and also kind of really sharp with his wedge game, like Steve Stricker's won here before back in 2009, and when he was kind of at the top of his wedge game, and you're going to get 8 to 10 wedges around, and I know Zach Johnson says he likes the course here because of that. So I think I'm not going to go into heavy high ownership plays where just because the guy has driving distance like a Tony Finau or whatnot. I'm going to try to be a little more strategic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a couple of par fours here that are pretty short, under 400 yards, and then I mean half of the holes are par fours between 400 and 500 yards. So there's nothing, par four wise, there's nothing like too crazy. There's no 500 plus holes. And then, you have the one longer par five, but for the most part, even some of the shorter guys are going to have relatively short approach shots. So it should be a good test of everything.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons some of the ball strikers may have really popped in the past is these greens seem to be pretty easy to putt on. I don't think they're too undulating, so I think you can kind of get a lot of pretty level putts versus last week a lot of these guys I feel like were being pretty defensive on some of these putts, and even at the PGA with how fast the greens were. So I think this week a guy like Adam Scott, who has a pretty good track record here, I don't know what his form is like, but in the past I think he's done pretty well here because a lot of the putts he could have a better chance of making, I guess.
Right, absolutely. And like just real quick aside, like you said before, like Glen Oaks, I live literally 15 minutes away from that course. Like grew up on Long Island, and I had never heard of it before. So
I'm in the same boat. Yeah,
it really is like it was wild when I saw that on the PGA schedule. I was like, Glen Oaks is in Westbury. I'm like, Westbury's right up the block from me, and I had never heard of it before, but it was a really nice course. But sorry, I'm just so stoked that I got to go to another PGA event that I'm still like on a high from it. So all right, so why don't we dive into some plays this week? I'm thinking we can take a look at like the 10K and up guys first. So we actually have 5 guys here in this range. We got Spieth, DJ, Rahm, Thomas, and Hideki. So what are your thoughts here? Where are you leaning? What are you thinking ownership wise? However you want to take it.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing I usually look each week is kind of how you can structure lineups, and the first thing that pops off is the lowest priced golfer this week, I believe, is 6,700.
Yep.
Which a lot higher than that's the highest I've ever seen it, to be honest, in the past kind of 2 years or year or two, and I think that's going to limit the ownership on. That's going to cap the ownership on these 12,000 guys in Spieth and DJ, just because I think people are going to want to be able to kind of go for value in the 9 and 8K and even these 10K guys and not be too capped out with only getting just one stud. So I think 20% is where I think those two at the top are actually going to be capped, even with DJ coming off of a win. And Rahm, right. I thought Rahm would be a little bit more popular, kind of right under there, but he's only had 6 fan share tags so far. He's 22nd, the lowest, or sorry, him and Thomas are the lowest out of these 5. Right. So I'm going to start off really, really liking Rahm. Actually, he played pretty well last week. I think this course will set up well for him. Like you said, I think he's got the length, and I think his short game, he nails putting, and I think he's got the tee degree game to take this place down.
Yeah, absolutely. I Again, if anybody's ever listened to this podcast, they know how much I love Rom. So I'm always on the Rom train. And whenever he's not being talked about, I think it's a win. And I mean, honestly, for him to be 10-6 after really he finished in third place last week. It's not like he had a bad result. Like he's $1,400, $1,500 cheaper than the top two guys. So I can't believe that he's been tagged that few times. But hey, if that's the case, then I'll gladly take him at lower ownership this week. And just something real quick that you mentioned before too, with these guys, when they're all the way up at the top and there's two guys at the same price, we kind of always see their ownership capped a little bit, right? Even if you can go studs and duds, like you can't really get their ownership too high anyway.
Yeah, I think that, and when projecting ownership, that's the most important thing that some people don't really understand. You know, that you've got a certain salary cap, right? So these guys can only be so high owned when you've got 5 guys above 10K and you've got 10 or 15 guys above 8.8. So once we go up all the way to 1,200, like you said, there's going to be a cap unless it's like Tiger at his peak and you've got a guaranteed top 3 finish almost. So people are going to want to get as many top guys that have a really solid chance at like a top 5 or 10 finish, and particularly in a field this loaded where you can get guys down in the 8K range that can feel pretty confident can get a top 10. I think that people will kind of go that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else you want to touch on in this range before we head down to the 9K guys?
I think I think Thomas, it's a pretty steep price for him even after he won the PGA, and people still don't really trust him for whatever reason, even though he finished I think 6th place last week again. He's hot right now, and I think it's weird because I feel like if his price was $9,700, people would be all over him. But just that extra $600 boost, I think keep an eye out for him in these playoffs. And then lastly, I think out of the DJ and Speed, I'm just gonna put my peg down on DJ this week. I think he's gonna keep it rolling.
Yeah, definitely, and I think. Granted, we didn't really know what was going to happen last week between, distance accuracy, whatever other stats you want to factor in because of the no history. But if there is an edge for distance, and we kind of saw how the distance worked out between Johnson and Spieth last week, I think we can safely say that Johnson's a great play this week. So then we have. It's a little weird. We only have 4 guys in the 9K range this week. We got McIlroy, Ricky Fowler, Jason Day, and Louis Oosthuizen. I think that this is why the min salary guys are a little bit higher, because once you get out of the 10K range, it drops pretty quickly. I mean, there's only maybe 8 or 10 guys in the 8K range with these 4 guys. So there's definitely some value to be had this week. Not that you can't fit in like DJ and Spieth, obviously, but any thoughts on these 9K guys?
Well, I think Fowler is my go-to pick this week. I think he started off hot last week. Tied for first after the 36 holes and kind of fell off on the weekend, shot 4 over. And I think he's just been so consistent all year. He's hitting the ball well. He had, one bad round, shot even par on Sunday. And I think coming to a course where he's won before, I think he's got good course history here, decent course history here. And I think he's had a great year, and he's been playing probably the best to only have 1 win. So I like Fowler the best out of this range. Yeah,
I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, you saw I went on a little rant this morning because, like, at one point today he had it's come up considerably now, but he had like 2 tags when I woke up this morning, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, he won here 2 years ago. He's had like, I don't know, the 4th or 5th best season probably of any golfer on tour this year. And he can score on any hole. So I was completely missing it. Now I think he's up to 13 tags. So And I think my rant actually counted as one of those tags because that's how good the fan share guys are.
Yeah, and I think Rory right there is second in tags right now, and I think people saw. I mean, he won last year. He's won here before. I'm hoping that the ownership really congregates on him right there, because he just hasn't really looked great with the putter and the irons right now, and I think Fowler's just playing better than him, just flat out. And I really like, if we could get a good ownership delta between those two, and I feel pretty comfortable with Fowler.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been all over the news recently with McIlroy really not being able to practice as much as he wants to because of that rib injury. He just has to completely shut it down when it starts to hurt at all. So, I mean, I get why people want to play him, and I understand because clearly when he's on, he's, easily top 3, I would say, in the world. But it's tough to trust him if he moves the wrong way and he has to withdraw or something. The injury is no joke. And 3 weeks ago, he said he wasn't even playing these events. So I'm definitely hestant on McIlroy right now. Not that he's like Stenson and he's just going to withdraw because, he has like a stomach bug or something. But yeah, I'm with you there. And we had a little bit of a Jason Day sighting last week. He finished in 6th place, and he's kind of been like the GPP darling in all these majors and hasn't really done much this year. And now all of a sudden he's got, a T9 at the PGA and a T6 last week. And he's played this course pretty well. In, the last 4 years, he hasn't finished worse than 15th. So, I mean, I like Fowler as much as anybody, but I'm definitely going to have some exposure today as well if he's snapping back into form.
Yeah, Fowler's my pick to win, but I think Day right there, I'm definitely going to have some exposure to. And honestly, I think I might, stack those two in a lot of lineups and just eat the Day ownership and try to, hopefully Fowler is reasonable, and then try to find some good guys down below.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's something we talk about a lot, right? Like at some point, even in a GPP, if you think a guy's just an objectively great play, you figure out, you deal with that ownership and you figure out someone who's going to be a little lesser owned at a different price point. I think that people get hung up a little bit on ownership sometimes and end up just sort of like going, not for like bad plays, but avoiding objectively good plays. Like if they're going to be popular, it's usually for a good reason, unless you feel really strongly about it the other way.
Yeah, I agree. I think my kind of almost global strategy is I look each week and see like who is popular. If the guys that I like are just going to be super chalky, then I really bring my bankroll down for the week. And if I find a week where all the guys I really like, are going under the radar, like say Fowler and all my other plays, then I'll really amp up the volume and kind of treat it like poker in that regard, where I'm playing higher volume because I think I have a better hand effectively.
Right, exactly. And that's another good point. I mean, we sort of, as I think maybe I think in other sports maybe it's talked about a little bit more. But I don't know that in golf we do like the best job of talking about that kind of stuff, like bankroll management and just picking the right contest for you and stuff like that. But that's a great point. You really should figure out, if you're just going to be with everybody, then, play a few less lineups just to sort of cover yourself if it doesn't work out for you that week. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah. And I think, we're back to Day, I guess, here. I think we mentioned he's kind of coming around, and I think last year he just had a historic year with the putter if you look at the stats, and I really think his putting is, along with his iron game, but his putting is looks kind of back where it was, and the fact that he has a little bit more confidence with the irons, I think an open course like this, if he can just get that ball in the fairway, I think he's got a good shot to ship it. So
yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, the last guy in this range is Louis. He has pretty elite course history here. And it's something me and Evan talk about a lot, like balancing, like you said before, you do factor it in, but you're not like completely a slave to it. But T8, T12, and a runner-up in his last 3 starts here is pretty decent. So what are your thoughts on Oosthuizen this week?
Yeah, no, I agree. I circled him coming into the week. I'm actually a little surprised at his fan share tag count. He's 6th in tags right now for a guy that the industry just overall, especially when he gets priced this high, seems to be a little hesitant on because of his back or his inconsistency. But he's had a actually surprisingly consistent year. He's made most of the cuts and he's obviously had 2 good finishes in a row here. I like him. And I agree with the course history. I'm more of a course history guy when there's more of a sample size. If a guy's played event, 5, 6, 7 times, and he's got a pretty solid track record here. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for all the hesitancy for rostering him, he's made 14 to 15 cuts this year. Like it is pretty interesting to see how like just I don't know how to even like term it, just like being biased against some guys.
It's narratives, and this is what
Right.
actually back to my article that I write for Fanshare. I talk about this a lot as just the narratives of the week, so that you can, if you want, go against them or go whatnot. So like the Stenson withdrawal week, quote unquote, that was the big narrative of the Wyndham Championship, right? And I wrote about it and how take it with a grain of salt potentially because he's been playing well. He's had 2 top 20 finishes in a row, and he goes out to the Wyndham, and people were saying he didn't care. But these guys are professionals, and if I didn't believe the narrative that week, I went pretty sharply against it, and that's how I qualified for the Fantasy Golf World Championship. So I think it's those narratives, like you said, that people can drive ownership, and you really need to understand what's driving the narrative and whether it's actually rooted in some truth.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we see that across DFS in general. It's not just golf. People buy in for whatever reason to different narratives. And if you can find an edge by either going with it or going against it, then it's definitely going to pay off at some point for you. So yeah, let's head down to these 8K guys, and I'll give you a second and not put you on the spot this time. I'll start off on this range. For a reason, and I mean I can see it a little bit, but Charlie Hoffman is really, really popping in a lot of the models that I put together this week. He has sort of up and down course history here. He's missed 2 cuts out of the last 5 years, but he has a 3rd and 27th and 26th, the other 3. So, I mean, I guess you'd kind of want to shape him up as like a GPP play, given that.
I disagree with that. I actually think he's a good cash play as well. And my reason for this is we were talking about the course history and how sample size matter, but also depends on how they are playing at a given year. And
Right.
Charlie Hoffman's having the best year of his career, I'd say. But does he have a win this year? I guess he doesn't have a win, so not his best year. But he's been probably the most consistent he's ever been. And I think some of those years he might just I don't think he was playing quite as well. And he does, like you said, has a 1st and a 3rd place finish. So I think it's clearly a course that when he's feeling good, he can attack. And I think this run that he's on right now, he's clearly playing fantastic golf. He's got motivation going into the President's Cup, if you believe that narrative or not.
Right.
And I had him last week pretty heavily, and I followed his round around on Sunday, kind of on Shot Tracker, and he was just shot a 4 or 5 under final round on a day where I think it might have been the round of the day. And I think taking that momentum into this week, I actually like him in all formats.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And then other than that, in this range, I mean, obviously these guys are still, towards the top of the salary range, clearly. And most of them are going to be good plays either way. I do like Casey. And I do.
What do you think of Brooks this week? I'm the biggest Koepka fanboy there is, so I kind of want an unvarnished, unbiased opinion on what you think of Brooks at 8,700, which is pretty good price for him.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good price for him this week. He was coming in with really good form until last week, and sort of, what was he, 49th, I think.
Yeah.
So he didn't wow you. It's not something you love to see. He was 57th here last year, and he missed the cut the year prior. So that is a little bit of a red flag for me. But I mean, again, if you're going to say that this is a distance course, right? He has what? He's ninth in driving distance this year on tour. He's third in par 5 scoring, and he's top 25 in par 4 scoring. So I mean, I don't have a problem with it at all. If his ball striking is any, is sort of put together at all, I think he can absolutely demolish this course. So he's not my favorite play in this range. I really, really like Chappell and Hoffman probably the most in this range. And then I always like Casey. I just think he's so steady. Another guy who's, when you think about it, like, how many people talk about Paul Casey? Obviously in DFS, we mention him, but just in general, nobody's really talking about the guy, and he's 17 of 18 in cuts this year. Like, he's putting together, I mean, he doesn't have a win, but he's putting together one of his most consistent seasons for sure. I mean, last year he had 5 missed cuts. Like, he's been known to miss cuts here and there before this year, and he's just not doing that this year at all. He hasn't missed a cut since the Sony Open, which was in January. So I think he's about as safe as they come week in and week out.
Yeah, you're asking who's talking about him. Literally only the DFS community, because I don't think the tourist or the CBS broadcast has shown a shot of his in the past 2 weeks, or 3 weeks that he's played. Yep. He's been top 10 in the leaderboard. I don't think we've seen really one shot. I know I was following him pretty closely at the PGA and last week as well, and just following him on Shot Tracker, it's like every hole 6 feet missed putt for birdie, but still most of the time, he's hitting every green. He's hitting it so well, and I think I wasn't sure what to think of him in GPPs because of his potential ownership, but just I've been kind of talking myself into him because of what I kind of mentioned about the greens earlier. Like, he's really hasn't been putting that great, but he's still been just striking the ball so well. And I think coming into a course where he's put well on these greens before, and he's hitting the ball potentially better than anyone in the field, I think he could have that. He doesn't really win, but he might actually be able to pull out a win for once.
Right, and we're in this range now where, I mean, if you're going to pay $12,000 for a guy, you really want him to win. If you're going to pay $8,900 for a guy, you can get away with the top 20 and feel pretty good about it still. It's not like, these guys below 9,000 or, really need to absolutely win to pay off for their price for that week. And you're right. They really don't show him ever. And as a pure golf fan, like, me and my dad followed him for a couple of holes on Friday, and it was like, it's impressive to watch. Like, his ball striking is excellent. We were sitting on the 10th green for a little bit, and he was one of the few guys that birdied that hole on Friday. So I like him quite a bit, and you're right. I don't think that he gets the the sort of respect or whatever notoriety that he deserves. And I also like Kuchar this week. He just doesn't stop. Like, finally he's getting some sort of DFS love. But even actually, now that I'm looking at it, he only has 8 tags right now, but all the guy does is like top 20. Like,
I know, but
what more do you really want?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm not going to be on him this week just because I think there's going to be a higher percentage of 6 of 6s, and I think you need to really – I think I'm going to go for birdie makers a little bit more, and I think I'm not sure he makes enough birdies. I'm gonna look for kind of the guys like a Casey and a Day and a Fowler that makes a little bit more birdies, even though he might be able to kind of sneak in a top 10 or top 15 finish. Right.
That's fair. What about these few guys down at the bottom we haven't mentioned? Webb, Rose, and Woodland down.
I can't believe we haven't mentioned Sergio Garcia, Masters champion. He coming back here at 8,400. Like, talent wise and world ranking wise, I'm not sure exactly what he's ranked right now, but just in general, I feel like it's kind of disrespect for Garcia at 8,400 to be with Webb Simpson, you know?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I'm not the largest Sergio fan, so I typically just sort of glaze over when I start looking at him for whatever reason. But you're right. He is. I mean,
Well,
he's seventh in the world, and he's down at what, the 15th salary ish, somewhere around there.
yeah.
So there's definitely a discrepancy there. And he was top 25
It's
here
just yeah,
last
it's just
year.
weird to see him with those guys. He missed the cut at the PGA, but I mean, we'll we'll see how he comes back, I guess, after a little bit of a break here. And I know he got married in between kind of the Open and that little stretch of run there. So maybe I think he's got the upside that you would want in a GPP if he's not going to be kind of owned that much. So stay tuned. He's 18th right now in tags for fan share, so he might be a little GPP option, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. The only thing, I'm diving into narrative street here, but he's like very, very safely in to the BMW because he's 22nd right now, so he's not going to fall out of the top 70.
Sure.
And I don't know. I just don't really like the guy, so I can't pull the
All
trigger
right,
there.
he's a fade. He's a fade.
um, anybody else out of those last three that jump out at you, or are those all sort of avoids for you? Simpson, Rose, and Woodland.
Well, I circled Webb coming into the week before I saw the pricing, and this just 8,200 for Webb. He's definitely playing well. He's finally figured out the putter, kind of going that Kuchar style up the wrist putting, and I could maybe see myself playing a few shares of Webb there, just because of how well he's playing. He's got some good course history here.
Absolutely. And
But Woodland's a big no for me.
I know, and it hurts because I'm a big Woodland guy.
I know.
But clearly, if you've seen me,
Yeah.
Roger, and Wedge going back and forth every single week since I've been on their pod, but yeah, I mean, this price is a little much for me this week after a miscut. For him to have gone up $1,000, I think is a little. I mean, he does have good course history here, but I think that's a little much for me. So I'll have a share or two of him just because I like room for the guy, and I'll watch him either way, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think objectively, I'm not crazy about Woodland either. And then speaking of guys who really like world golf ranking versus DraftKings price this week is a little odd. I think Adam Scott coming in under 8K at 7,900. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, he's out of all the players this week, he's the biggest question mark for me. Just he hasn't been playing that great this summer. He played well at the beginning of the year with the Masters and the Players, but he's just been struggling with that putter a bit. But this summer and after not playing a couple weeks, I'm not sure. Has he been practicing that much, and what will that even matter? These guys are so talented. He could probably come in here pretty cold and still finish well. So at 7,900, I think I got to consider him. So I think he might be in the player pool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, he's definitely been shaky lately. He was, he sort of puttered around and was like 60th at the PGA. But I mean, for 7,900, whenever you can roster a guy with that much just raw talent, I think it's worthy of consideration. Like for him to be under Webb, Rose, and Woodland, and then
Yeah.
like right next to Brandon Grace right now, I think is kind of a weird price for him. So I'll definitely take a couple stabs at him.
I will say this: if it was last week's tournament, I actually don't think I would have played him at this price even. But I think coming into a course that suits him, clearly he's got just great history here. I think it's really course dependent, just given that there's so many other unknowns. But the fact that he does, like this course, and that he should be able to take advantage with kind of his driver on these two. I think there's two drivable par fours potentially, or at least one, and then the three par fives. And then I think, like I said earlier, the greens might be easier to putt. and he's had history of putting well on them. So I think that's kind of more the reason I'm going to play him this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally on board with that. And then as we sort of go down a little bit further, if anybody listening right now reads the playbook article that I put up on DraftKings, I do like the with the grain and against the grain. And this week, when I built my model for driving accuracy and sort of the key stats that I look at in regards to that and strokes gained approach and things, Ryan Moore kind of popped, and it's freaking me out a little bit. Like, I don't know what the machine learning model knows that I don't, because he's not somebody that I was looking at before that. But now it's kind of freaking me out a little bit and opening my eyes to possibly rostering him, even though it doesn't feel great.
I just can't do it with Moore. I'm not a big Moore guy, and
Yeah.
Kisner is right there at the same price, 7,700, and only one fan share tag right now. And I'm kind of shocked by that. I mean, he's been playing. He played almost won the PGA Championship. He's been playing well all summer. You can understand a little bit of a reversion after kind of an emotional PGA Championship, but I think he's going to come back strong this week. And I mean, he didn't play awful. I didn't miss the cut any of the past 2 weeks.
Right.
At the what Northern Trust, I guess. I keep calling it the
Northern
Barclays.
Trust, yeah. Everybody was doing that.
But yeah, so I like Kisner at 7,700 way more than Moore. So I'll be putting all my shares there instead.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's fair. I mean, as just a human with two eyes watching golf, I know that Kisner's a much better play. It was the weirdest thing. It's like I don't know, I know you do the ownership projections and everything else, but I dabble a little bit with like some machine learning stuff and throwing in the stats and seeing what's spit out. And when I saw that today, I was just kind of like, what are they seeing that I'm missing? Because this is a little weird. But
they haven't seen Ryan Moore putt in person. That's the issue. They're a robot.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility there. But yeah, I'm with you on Kisner. I think he's a good play this week also. And then as we keep going, Ches sort of popped a little bit for me. I can't say I can't possibly like broadcast Keegan being a play because I can't deal with it, but he popped a little bit in my models also. Is there anybody else sort of in this?
Yeah, I'm not going to play much in the lower 7K range, but in this top half, I'm surprised Berger hasn't gotten a little bit more buzz. He's only has 5 fan share tags. He's 27th in tags at 7,600. He's been playing decent this summer. He missed the cut at the PGA, but he had a win at the St. Jude. He's a talented player. He's about to make his President's Cup debut in a couple weeks. Like, I could see him making a run here in the playoffs. He seems like the kind of competitor that would, care a little bit more about these playoffs, especially as a young guy trying to make his name on tour. I know he said after Justin Thomas won the PGA, like, inspired him he wanted to go out and hit 5 hours worth of range balls. I think he's got a run in him in this playoffs, and I think that at $7,600, I'm going to be playing a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth noting he was like, I think it was like top 20 in proximity last week. So his, as much as he didn't, he obviously didn't score well enough to really factor in. But his irons are definitely, getting a little dialed in. He really, really screwed up around the greens. He actually lost strokes around the green last week. But his proximity numbers were great, which is something that, you can look at greens and regulation and you can look at all these other stats, but at the end of the day, proximity is probably the most important thing for ball striking, because that's going to tell you a heck of a lot more. If a green in regulation is you miss it by a foot or you miss it by 100 yards, it's still the same thing. At least with, when you look at proximity, you can get a better feel for what's going on there. Yeah. So then, how about in this low? You said you're not crazy about a lot of guys.
I mean, I like Finau and Cantlay, but they're just going to be. I feel like Cantlay right now is sixth most in tags, and by far the most tagged out of this 7K range. I feel like he's just going to be super chalk. He was first in greens and regulation last week, so it's kind of leading to this, and he hasn't missed a cut all year, I don't believe. So I like Cantlay a lot, but I think a lot of my structuring will end up being, like two guys in the sixes and then trying to stack as many like guys in the 8 to 9K range, kind of those guys that we had mentioned previously. So I might try to ignore this range a bit here. But one guy I will be playing, I think, a little bit of, maybe a couple shares of, is Zach Johnson, just because of his history here. And I think that people are going to be going for the distance of a Finau, like right there, someone of that ilk. And I think that Zach might go a little bit overlooked, and he's going to have a bunch of wedges in, and maybe he gets hot with the putter this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I was playing around a little bit on Fantasy National today and looking at the last 12 rounds on Bentgrass specifically, and he was 13th in the model that I put together. So I'm definitely going to have a little bit of him. And actually, as much as I'm not crazy about the course history, Lovemark basically just made the cut last year, and he missed a cut this past week at the Northern Trust, but he popped in my model as well. I don't believe that he's going to be terribly popular. So, he only has one tag right now. So I'm going to just have a little sprinkle of Lovemark again this week.
Okay. I don't think I will be on Lovemark, but I can kind of see it. Some people are Lovemark guys. I'm just not a Lovemark guy.
That's fair. He's an acquired taste. You gotta.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I had I forget exactly which tournament it was, but I had him at like crazy low ownership one good week. So I have like a good feeling still about it. Like we were talking about before, right? This bias when you get one good thing or one bad thing out of a guy, and that like shapes your whole opinion on somebody.
Yep. That's hilarious.
And then, I mean, I'm a big Johnny Vegas guy too. I followed him around for like probably 5 holes last week. And clearly he was striking the ball well. And he's been up and down recently. Clearly, he won, he missed a cut, he got a 17th, he's kind of been all over the map, but, I'm definitely keeping an eye on him this week.
Yeah, he's a streaky golfer. So if you play him, I can understand it just during these streaks for sure. So he can get really hot and really, really cold.
Yes, unfortunately, he went through a very, very cold streak, which definitely did not help my my DK bankroll through the middle of the season this year. But
gotta ride him. I
forgive him. It's such a good name, you can't really fade him,
Yep.
All right. So, anybody else in that 7K, or are you ready to go real dumpster diving now?
Yeah, let's go dumpster diving. I actually like some guys down here. So.
No, I do too. It's like one of those things where it's 96 guys in the field this week, so even the cheapest guys are still going to be pretty good. Who maybe give me like one or two?
So there's a few guys down here that have like one fan share tag that I actually really like this week for a few shares in some of these larger GPPs. And Kevin Na is one that popped out to me. He has, I think, a few good finishes. I know I was looking at that 2009 tournament where there was just a lot of wedge players that kind of finished well, and he was one of them. Finished 11th that year. Had a few decent finishes here, but he played well at the Wyndham. Had a shot to win that until Stinson and Ollie kind of did their thing, and he's gained strokes approach the last three tournaments. I think a couple of strokes. I think 2 strokes gained each of the 3 tournaments. So approach game's coming around, and I think at when a course where he's going to have a bunch of wedges in, maybe he can kind of get hot there. I think another guy that I like is, the guy I like the most down here, and I'm going to play a lot of, and is going to be Mark Leishman. I think he's just a way better golfer than 6,900 and kind of the likes of a lot of these guys. He's had a great summer, and he had just 1 week course that maybe it just didn't suit his game at the Northern Trust, and he missed the cut by 1 shot, I believe, and now he's 6,900 all of a sudden after a bunch of top 20s in a row. So I like Leishman a lot. And then lastly, Kevin Tway down here just as a super flyer. He's actually only $5,000 on FanDuel, I believe, so I like him a lot there as well. But 6,800 on DraftKings, one fan share tag. So I think people have really kind of gotten off the Kevin Tway train. But a course where if driving distance does matter and ball striking matters a lot, I think Tway he showed a propensity earlier this summer to have that skill set. He just bombs the ball, and maybe he can get a few eagle chances.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're speaking my language with Tway. I love me some Kevin Tway. Me and Evan argue about him constantly. So I'm glad Evan's not with us tonight, and I can just pour on the love for Tway, because he's definitely, again, it's not somebody that you're going crazy on ownership wise, but if nobody's talking about the guy, he definitely has an avenue to success at a place like this. So I'll definitely have a little bit of him. Totally with you on Na also. I think he sort of lets him, not that he let people down, he was 29th, but I think he was a little heavily owned for people. People had a much better feeling about him coming into the week last week. And Leishman too, like you said, the price drop on him is nuts. What did he drop? He was like 8,400 last week, wasn't he?
Yeah, and
that's insane.
He burned a bunch of people as well. So he, I think he had some relatively decent ownership. Let me check what his price was last week. But yeah, he burned a bunch of people, and it was one shot missed cut.
Yeah,
and he was 8,400. Wow. So I like him this week, and I think he's got the talent to finish top 5 at a $6,900 down here. I'm gonna probably be heaviest in this range with Leishman.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you can get a guy that people are sour on that just dropped $1,500 with the season that he's had, and he missed the cut by a stroke, like why not load up on a guy like that? I also like Xander quite a bit. I'm a big Xander guy also. I don't know how.
Yeah,
your thoughts on him.
I know a lot of people are Xander guys, and I think just every week that he pops, I just must not be following closely enough, because I just don't really, I've never seen that many of his shots. I guess he won the Greenbrier, was it? I think I was on vacation that week, and I just didn't even watch that tournament, and I just haven't really seen him play much with kind of my own 2 eyes. So I don't really have a good basis of. His stats look great, and he kind of, I think he blew up at the PGA, but other than that, he's been just so solid all year, and even in majors like the U.S. Open where he finished top 5, like he's got talent, and I think I'm going to play a few shares of him as well this week.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of his game, and he has, he's not necessarily an imposing guy, but he's 20th in driving distance this year and 23rd in greens and regulation. So, if you're gonna have that, and he's gonna be on this week at 6,900, it's kind of hard to get away from him.
Yeah, and I think I was saying earlier, kind of structuring, one of my strategies might be, take a couple, like 2 or 3 of these guys and really kind of go stars and scrubs, just because I do like some of these guys, and try to get like Xander and Mark on, and then maybe one of these other super low owned guys like a Tway on a team, and then really stack up at the top. And I think in itself that lineup might be contrarian, because I don't think that many people are going to be going that heavy stars and scrubs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the way to go also. I mean, you can build a cash lineup that's pretty balanced that you feel good about, but if you're factoring in any sort of ownership considerations with GPPs, I think in a week like this, you can find 6,900, 6,800 guys that are going to make the cut. Just because of the strength of this field. Even the worst golfer in this field has a reasonable chance to make the cut.
And we briefly mentioned this, but it really goes without saying, but 96 people in the field, and 70 to 78 guys are going to make the cut. Like, only a few people are going to miss this cut. So I think taking chances like this is definitely a viable option.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So is there anybody else you're looking at down here, or what are you thinking?
No, I think I'm curious to see whether people will go back to Molinari. He was, I think about this same price last week, 6,900 or so, and people loaded up and really burned a lot of people there. Curious to see if people go back at a course where it's more of a, people are saying it's the bomber track, but at the same time, he finished second at the PGA and seems to be mispriced down here in the sixes. So I'm curious whether people will go back to Molinari.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's sort of middle of the road right now in tags, so who knows? But I honestly would have a hard time just completely basing all of my feelings on the miscut last week. He had been playing well, like you said, and I mean, he was runner up at the PGA, and that's not necessarily just a straight accuracy course. Like you did need some distance there, and he still managed to perform. So a couple breaks here and there, and I think he could be fine this week.
Yeah, he burned me all summer. I had him like U.S. Open, British Open, thinking he'd perform in the majors at like the same price, and just killed me all summer. So I kind of have a bad taste in my mouth. So I'm not sure I can overcome that, especially after coming off another miscut. So I'll probably just stick to Leishman there. But I could understand people going back to him, and we'll see if people do.
Yeah, definitely. So all right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was fun. You did great for your first time here. I'm proud of you.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And so don't forget, make sure you're following Logan. He's a good follow. He, he'll share out those ownership projections and everything else that he does over for FanShare at Logan Harper 11. Is there anything else you wanted to plug, Logan?
Yeah, no, just stay tuned. Wednesday, I usually will post the article in the morning, and then the projections about the same time. And just stay tuned on Twitter. Sometimes I'll release an update if things are looking like they'll materially have changed. So yeah, Logan G Harper 11 on Twitter. So I'll be there.
All right, great. Yeah, and also worth mentioning, we have the tournament this week actually starts on Friday. It's a little weird because of Labor Day weekend. They actually finish on Monday on Labor Day. So you have an extra day to, build lineups and figure everything else out. So if you're listening to this, make sure you give Logan a follow. If you just came across this, give me a follow at Matt Jones TFR. We're actually starting up, me and one of the guys that write for Fantasy Report are starting our football DFS podcast next Thursday. So make sure you're subscribed here or on YouTube and check it out. So good luck this week, everybody. And thanks again, Logan, for coming on.
Thanks. Yep. Appreciate it. And just check out FanShare Sports as well. Thanks, guys.
Totally.